What's up? Thanks for watching this video. My name is Trey Little, rapper, influencer, entrepreneur, TikTok. And the reason I like to throw that out there is because I'm more than just a rapper. I am someone who is an influence in pop culture, and I think it's important to not just entertain, but also be a leader for the youth and also help people form their opinions and just be a leader and talk about popular subjects and share what we can learn and how to grow. And I try to give value. That's my overall goal. Like, my overall goal with this is to try to give value. Like, I have music on my channel. I got vlogs. But at the same time, like, there's so many different things going on in our world that I think we need leaders to, to cover. You know what I mean? Like, for the people that I look up to, like the Kanyes, the Young Thugs and T Grizzlies, or whoever I look up to, right? Gary V. When I hear them talk about a subject that's going on, like, it helps me find more clarity because I follow them as a leader. So today I'm gonna be talking about how I got the support of the Detroit Police Department and what that means, like how it happened. I'm gonna go into some details because this is super relevant to what's going on in our climate today, So before we get into the video, make sure you like this because I do this full-time, music and all that, so that'll help you get into the recommended. Make sure you subscribe and comment because I see these comments and I try to respond to every single one, and then I try to answer questions. So if y'all got a question, I'll answer it. So I'm gonna do a couple shout outs real quick. Shout out to FaZe Harriet. Appreciate you. As more people come in, I'll do a couple more shout outs as we go. But so from Detroit, Michigan, and how I got involved with the just police department in Detroit is that there was a lot of tension in Detroit, due to like civil unrest and stuff like that. And I just felt like there was a lot of leadership, but there was a lot of confusion, there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of hurt, and people needed leadership in order to guide that pain and guide that hurt. And then there was a lot of people doing stuff. But I felt like for me, I try to lead out of love. I try to lead out of unity. But at the same time, sometimes love can be strong. Sometimes, love can be a fight. Sometimes it's not always as simple as, oh, let's hold hands and kumbaya. Sometimes it can be, it can be pretty strong, So what happened was there was a lot of tension, there was a lot of chaos, and I remember getting a bunch of text messages and a bunch of like calls and messages and DMs like, Trey, Detroit is about to get burned down, people are mad, people are about to fight with the police. And like, I just remember watching the news clips and nobody was standing out there saying, yo, what's going on? People were like, just standing around like, we don't know what to do, let's just throw stuff at the police. And then you had a lot of like anger and hurt, and I just felt like the anger and hurt, which is rightfully so, like, people have the right to feel anger and hurt, but I felt like people didn't know what to do with that. So what happened is you had a couple people who were, what do you call them, instigators, right? So they came down there and said, everybody that's in pain, everybody that's in hurt, let's fight the police. And it was some random people from the suburbs who had their face covered up, mask on, and they were just like these random people that had nothing to do with our city, that had nothing to do with, like, they wasn't from here, and you can just tell, like, they just, so they were trying to egg native Detroiters on, the young native Detroiters on, because the old Detroiters, who are like, my grandma, you will never see them out there fighting the police. Like, I don't care, like, any of my grandmas, any of my, granddad, like, any of them, right? Our history in Detroit is so rich when it comes to, like, where we're at as a city that you would never see them out there. So you had the younger Detroiters around my age and under out there, like, being led to, like, go at it with police. So for me, I'm looking and I'm like, yo, this just doesn't feel right. Like, I don't feel like this is called for, So what happened was I walked up to one of the officers, cool, like, nice, charming, tall, black officer, cool guy. And I'm like, yo, like, it was a lot of tension. You know what I mean? I seen SWAT straight up hop out with tear gas and cannons, and they started like at the crowd. So then I was in the crowd and I ran away and jumped to the side because I almost got hit with like rubber bullets and tear gas. Like, I thank God I didn't, because that stuff can put your eye out. So I seen what was about to happen, so I hurried up and ran out the way. And then I asked the officer, like, you know, this isn't what the original protest was about. This is a distraction from the original purpose, and these people that are starting this stuff had nothing to do with the original protest. So then he was like, I understand. So, you know, go home, protect yourself, do what you got to do, you know, get out of here. And that video went viral on TikTok. It got like 4 million views. Of, you know, I just walked up with my phone. I was documenting that whole night because the news wasn't really, you know, the news was just showing more of the conflict. They wasn't really showing like on foot conversations. So I was having conversations with people on foot. So then what happened was, after that, I started going to some of the protests to kind of see, like, okay, what is this about? Like, I want to speak up for justice. I want to do it in a way to where I don't have to have my family out there and getting hit with tear gas and rubber bullets, because that's what a lot of stuff was happening, right? So when I seen that the Detroit police officers who grew up in Detroit, who still live in there, who go to some of the churches, who went to some of the schools, they wanted to protest with us, but some of the leaders in Detroit was like, nah, get out of here. Like, we don't want anything to do with you. So for me, it was like, yo, these people, like, some of these officers I know, I went to school with some of them. My cousin just became an officer. So the people who are trying to fight with the officers, like, I just don't feel like they're from here or a part of the city. So I stood up, I said, you know what, man? Like, I feel like this is the right thing to do. It was like a God-led kind of thing. I'm like, all right, man, what officers want to be a part of it? Not just on some, like, let's take some pictures for social media, but no, like, I grew up in the city. I'm from the city. And, you know, there was a viral video that's going around of me standing in between some of the people who were trying to start problems in the police. And one of the officers said he was from the projects, the King homes in the street. Like, that's the hood. And the people who were shooting fireworks at him were like these little, you know, Starbucks drinking girls with fireworks, and these little like vape boys and vape kids trying to shoot fireworks at these big buff black officers from Detroit. And I'm like, listen, I can't let this happen. Y'all got to go through me first, right? And that was the big thing of, you know, why the police seen that video, and the chief of police seen it, the commander seen it, and they seen that video of me getting in between the people trying to instigate and the police got behind me with their guns, riot shields, and it was like amazing. When I say it was one of the greatest experiences that I think I've had in my life, like, you know, it's crazy. I can link the link to the video in the description. Like, that moment was amazing. So after that news spread that I was the guy who stopped, you know, and provided a lot of clarity. It was ugly. I got a lot of threats from people who wasn't happy about what I did and who wanted to tear junk up, and they wasn't happy with me. But, you know, I'm like, yo, this is my city. I grew up here, man. Like, y'all don't pay no taxes here. And I was calling people out. So I met with the chief, you know what I mean, talked to the chief about everything, and they wanted to continue to work and do some partnership. I started partnering with Eastern Michigan University. We were talking about policy change, and then we started fighting it, like, to really get the 8 can't wait, you know, and different things to protect our citizens and protect the people in our country from not getting, you know, profiled and potentially harassed by police. So we started having those conversations, right? And then so many of these videos started going around TikTok, the news, and I was on every news station in Detroit. So everywhere I went, police officers were pulling up on me, saying what's up, taking pictures with me, talking on their bullhorn. Until this day, like, I still get their respect, you know, and it was amazing because I'm like, you know, you have a city who's been through a lot of stuff. Our city was burned down in 1967. It was burned down because of a lot of civil unrest. There was some cops who brutally took the lives of some unarmed black men, and it was bad. There's a movie about it. It was horrible. So after that, the city got burned down. There was a lot of racial tension. But after that, due to new leadership, the police chief and, you know, so many other, I can't remember specifically, but there's a lot of leaders who came in and revamped and reformed the policing system in Detroit to make sure that any racist cops who profile, you know, don't have a place in here. It wasn't perfect. There's still a lot of things that needs to happen, but that's when I stepped up, and they invited me to say, you know what, Trey, we do have a lot of loose ends in our policing. Like, are you willing to help and speak for the community, on behalf of the community, and not just be the voice for my community, but one of the voices, you know? So that's how that happened, and it opened up a lot of amazing doors for me to be able to just build that bridge between the community who wants to fight for justice, but at the same time, you know, build up our community. Because we need, like, for us, our focus is providing better education, bringing funds, bringing jobs into our city, not tearing things up. Because it's, you know, if you look at Detroit, it's a huge city and it's already been, you know, abandoned. So our goal is to bring our city's economy up, and it's on the rise right now. So with that being said, that's like a good answer of like how I got the respect of Detroit Police. You know, what up, Sydney? What up, Jacob? And then, you know, so here's the next thing I want to talk about right now. All right, so right now I want to talk about, should we abolish the police, and do I think we should abolish the police, right? So with that being said, I feel like the history of policing, it was to, if I'm not mistaken, it was to guard businesses, and it was to protect businesses from, I guess, being, you know, being attacked or whatever, right? It was originally, if you go back in like history further back, I can't remember the exact date, but it was originally to protect businesses and stuff like that. So eventually, during the time of segregation being illegal, and you had a lot of the slaves running away, a lot of the policing became to hunt down and track down slaves. So that's like a little bit of the history of why, you know, the tension between minorities and police is the way that it is, right? And I'm not one of those people that's saying, oh, all people are racist, white people are, or police are, like, I'm not that kind of person, right? So I know people gonna see the first thing I said and come here and start attacking me, but just listen to what I have to say, right? Like I said, I got the commander, second position officer in Detroit's phone number. Like, I text him occasionally. Like, I meet with the police in Detroit. So I'm just giving you a little bit of context, right? So somebody said it was a slave patrol, right? So that's just the history. So then as you fast forward, you have so many different things that was put in place in America that that usually protected, you know, certain demographics of people, but it came at a disadvantage to minorities. So you already have this distrust. You already have minorities with this fear and, you know, this distrust. And then you already got the police, you know, kind of like, okay, this is what I got to do, right? So fast forward, you got the war on drugs, where Ronald Reagan, who was politically like a figure in our country and in America, right? He allowed guns and drugs to be imported in our communities, in African American communities, and, you know, a lot of the money that was made off drugs was funded for war. So you can look that up. Look up the war on drugs, Ronald Reagan, right? And a lot of people turned a blind eye to it, and I grew up as a byproduct of that in my neighborhood, to where it was huge amounts of guns, huge amounts of like all that, right? And I had to fight for my life until I got out of that, and I thank God that I'm alive to this day. So I was a byproduct of the war on drugs. So when you look at that, you had drugs imported into minority communities, and then you had like things like, what was it? I'm trying not to say too much because I don't want to get demonetized, but you had, you know, a certain drug in a black community and then a certain drug in a white community, but the people in a black community would get, like, I think it was like 3 times the sentence as the drug in a white community. So like I said, I'm trying not to get into specific details because, you know, YouTube monitors this stuff. So with that being said, you had so much profiling going on in the communities, and then it created a further distrust, right? So then you got the stop and frisk laws that popped up. And, you know, I've been a victim of this. Like, there's many times that I've been driving, walking around, I done got pulled out on. Officers done rolled up on me, screaming at me and saying I fit the description of a criminal. And I'm like, yo, I work hard. I'm a father, husband, you know, like, go to church, like all that stuff, right? And I'm like, I'm not a criminal, like, you know. So been a victim of that. And then so that's just historically, right? So fast forward, when you look at cities like Detroit, you know, when you get when you look at cities like Detroit has adopted so many different things to kind of reform and combat that. So the short answer is no, I don't think police should be abolished. But when I look at what happened in Detroit, policing was reformed, meaning that if our city is 84 or 82 to 84% black, our police chief became a black police chief, and majority of the policing in Detroit are black people from that community, which is important, right? Because if you got, like, for instance, there's an officer who who's my neighbor. So for her, she lives here. So if she lives here, she knows some of the faces. She patrols some of these areas. So she's not about to go up and get scared because somebody got a do-rag on or they got their shirt off and they walking and sagging. She's not about to be like, oh, let me run up on this person and choke them out, right? So for her, she's aware that that's like something that you see a lot in the community, in the inner city community, right? Versus if you have people who live in the suburbs and they have a completely different experience in the suburbs, and then they come to police inner city communities. For them, they don't understand how the communities work. They don't understand who's a target, who's not a target, who's a threat, who's not a threat. So they get thrown in, and there's this trauma, there's this PTSD, which makes it harder for them to do their job in a way that's successful. And I believe that's why you look at Detroit, and Detroit was one of the only cities that didn't have any sort of major damage or any major civil unrest that destroyed the city because of, the reform. And you got some people in Detroit that's trying to overthrow the chief, overthrow the mayor, which I've tried to have conversations with those people, and, I haven't got really any good answers. I mean, I'm still open to dialogue, but for me, I'm more about having conversations. Listen, when I say I talked to the chief of police in Detroit for like 2.5 hours with his right-hand man, like, for me, that's so powerful because he listened, he gave me his time, he heard me out, and we have a ongoing relationship. So we're talking about how to get more young African Americans in, police uniform to police the city, because that's very important, right? So then you don't have just all white police in a black community, because when you look in the suburbs, from what it seems like, it doesn't seem like the suburbs usually struggle with these issues. So, and you do have a lot of like crime when you look at like low income suburban communities. Like, you got like a big amount of drugs. You got like a drug epidemic and stuff like that. But you don't really hear a lot of reports on the news of like brutality and stuff like that. I'm sure it happens, right? Now I hear a lot of people saying it happens. And there's a lot of those reports out there, but you don't really hear about the civil unrest with that, So when it comes to minorities and African American communities, there's a lot of history with it, which makes it pile up. So when things happen, it's an outburst. So I think the best thing that, can happen instead of abolishing police is have different leaders like myself from the community partner with the police to be a bridge and to have those conversations to figure out how to, bring more people from the community to become officers, and then have more people who are officers get that training and that racial training and that diversity training and even trauma training. Because as an officer, if you see and witness a lot of trauma and then you got to wake up the next morning and go do your job, like, that's tough. So that's one thing that we're working on right now. A lot of work is not easy, but that's why, like I said, I'm not one of those people who are just like, oh, it's either this or that. It's either racist police or abolish. It's way more deep and way more levels of that, right? So when people try to come at me with those arguments, it really doesn't do anything because, like I said, for me, it's so much more to it than just that, So with that being said, like, I'm excited to see what we do in our city. We really believe that we're going to be an example for the rest of our country and the rest of our world, potentially, with everything that we're doing in our city of Detroit. And it's a really beautiful situation that we're in. And I think if we have more stuff like that, there will be a lot more peace between people who come from the hood or people who come from the suburbs. If there was more communication, more of a bridge, more of a conversational, like just exchange, to where people got to know each other's story, where people got to talk. The problem is when people are so segregated and, people are pushed out or not welcome or misunderstood, then, You know what I mean? Like, then that's when those problems come out of miscommunication. I have so many conversations with kids from the suburbs who grew up Republican, or the ones who want to talk and actually have conversations. I got friends who are millionaires. I got friends who are in the hood. So I have a lot of conversations, which is usually the solution to a lot of the misconceptions and misinformation, you know. So, like I said, I'm excited to see where that go. I don't think we should abolish the police, but I think we need to make sure that police are held accountable. And there are things like the 8 can't wait, where like you gotta ban chokeholds. You know, you can't shoot at moving vehicles. You have to do de-escalation, to where you can't just shoot at somebody or choke them out and take their life just because, right? You have to do de-escalation, meaning give warnings, then use, you know, your hands, and if you can't do that, use a taser, or last resort is using your weapon or taking a life, right? And sometimes things happen so fast, but in Detroit, there's times where the police had to take somebody's life, right? And I was hurt because nobody deserved to have their life taken away, but at the same time, I wasn't in an uproar about it, because we seen videos that the people were obviously attacking the police and they tried their best to de-escalate, but once it started to escalate even more from the suspects, and then they had to take it in further measures, you know what I mean? So yeah, so there's so many different things that we can do to make sure that these things don't happen, and that's what I'm about, because crime is real. You know, I live in a city where there's a lot of crime, and crime is real, and we do need some sort of policing. But I think maybe we should have a thing like social work at a lower level, to where if somebody's homeless, or if they're mentally you know, ill and they're breaking into something, to where they get proper treatment and don't just get their life taken. Or if someone's like high or on drugs or drunk and they're starting fights, to where like a social work will come out with some sort of protection, but not like a military unit, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, there's so much more that can be broken down. So if y'all got any more questions, drop it in the comments. Like this video. Thanks for watching, and I am out.